Welcome to Prepared for Parenthood, the podcast for hopeful, expectant, and new parents with little ones up to age 5. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Duger, a psychotherapist, author, educator, parent coach, and married mother of 2. On this show, we'll discuss everything from the most up-to-date practicals of best supporting your young children, to thriving in relationship as a family, to more surprising topics around the psychology and development of babies from conception through age 5. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I'm thrilled to have you here today. Welcome back to Prepared for Parenthood. Our guest today is Holly Lammer, a registered nurse certified in inpatient obstetric nursing with more than 25 years of experience in low and high-risk births. Her observations of birthers and her studies in pre- and perinatal psychology and in mindfulness led her to develop a mindfulness and energetics-based birth education program. Holly teaches this program locally for her hospital system in Idaho and has now expanded it to both a self-paced online program and the publishing of her new book, Intelligent Birthing, Ancient Wisdom for a Modern Birthing World. Through the years, Holly has spoken at professional conferences locally and nationally to help educate professionals and birthers alike about the importance of gestation and birth on lifelong health and happiness. Holly was also the co-host of the Mindful Birth, Peaceful Earth podcast with Jamie Crockett, which published 49 episodes. Holly is a parent and a grandparent, and her mission has been to water the seeds of peace for the next generation. Welcome, Holly. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. People knowing who I am after a while would often ask me, why are you still working at a hospital?
Sure.
My answer has always been because I feel like those are the people who need it the most. I'm not physically working on the floor anymore, but I feel like I was able to offer something, at least to the people that I was with. Not that everybody got that kind of nurse, that could really hopefully change the trajectory of their motherhood experience, the trajectory of that baby's experience, just by bringing these concepts into the birth. And I saw quite a few interesting transformational moments in that vein.
Could you share one of them?
One of my favorites is when I had a very young birther and she was there with her mom. She had a plan. She wanted to go unmedicated. I always ask why, because I'm afraid of needles is not the right answer. We talked through those things and how can we facilitate. And she ended up having this beautiful unmedicated birth. She was probably 17. And we talked about, do you want to breastfeed afterwards? She was saying how it was really important to her. And so I always talk through it beforehand, especially when there's other family members in there. So you're going to hold the baby on your belly after it's born and at least until baby breastfeeds. And hopefully that's the plan, because if you take baby away, that can interrupt bonding and breastfeeding. And I talk about the breast crawl. So as soon as the baby came out, of course, everybody's excited. And then immediately grandma wants to take the baby. It was literally within 5 minutes. And she's handing the baby over to her mom. I said, whoa. Remember we talked about breastfeeding and how important it is for you to keep the baby on your chest for that. And they're, okay. Breast crawl, skin to skin. It took about an hour. And after that, grandma said, okay, well, it's my turn to hold the baby now. And the mom said, it's my baby. I don't want you to hold him yet. It gives me chills to just think 5 minutes after the baby born, she was ready to hand it over. And now, not only has she figured out breastfeeding, it's that transformation of like, oh, I'm a mom now. I'm responsible for this baby. I know how to take care of it. My baby knows how to breastfeed. We just figured that out together without any help. And no, I'm not just going to hand him over to somebody else. So those kinds of moments were really impactful for me.
What a beautiful transformation to witness and to help facilitate as well. There's something so empowering for people, even if a birth or parts of a birth don't go as someone hoped for. Obviously, as you alluded to, there's a lot of birth trauma that happens or postpartum trauma as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like to share with listeners, 99% of the things that happen can be repaired. And so even if it doesn't go well or you handed the baby over to your mother and now you're feeling badly about it,
Right.
oh, whatever happened,
Yeah.
you can go back and repair that for both you and your baby and your whole family system
Yes.
and set yourself up for the positive attachment and bonding and parenting situation that you're hoping for, right? So
Yeah.
just because something doesn't go well or you had one birth that really wasn't what you hoped for and the second one was and you feel guilty, there are so many different scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
So much can be healed. And the earlier you heal it, the less you have to live with it and less your baby has to live with it and navigate it later on in life. So I
Right.
always share with people, I want to see you as soon as possible, as soon as you're able, as with
Mm-hmm.
most things. The
Yes.
earlier you navigate the issue, usually the better the outcome. So,
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. People usually don't sign up for my classes until they're pretty late in the pregnancy. And I encourage them to sign up earlier because of this whole prenatal bonding thing. But I talk about how we have the highest reported levels of stress of any developed nation in the world. And it's that reported level of stress that's impacting our systems. But I'll say when you stress, then baby can be flooded with stress hormones and everybody gets concerned. But right now, you have the opportunity to anytime put your hands on your baby and say, hey, baby, this has nothing to do with you. And every time you say that, you're literally shifting your nervous system from that fight or flight or sympathetic to parasympathetic. So we can actually start repairing even in the womb, is my point. Definitely right after the birth. And I do encourage people, if your baby ends up having to go to NICU or something, you do get separated for some reason, don't despair. You can get that time back. I remember teaching new nurses about labor and delivery. I was talking a little bit about pre and perinatal psychology. I had a girl in there who had a lot of trauma and baby had to go to NICU. She was tearful and she talked to me after class and she's like, I just have had such a hard time bonding with this baby. And the baby was probably 6 months old. And she's like, I think it's because we were separated. When I was out of control, I didn't have any access and she was in the NICU for 2 weeks. There was some kind of story like that. And I just said, you know what you should do is actually just lay down with your baby and tell her how you feel. Right. When I gave her name of a local postnatal psychology person, but I said, for right now, before you even get that appointment, you and your husband can just lay down and just tell your baby your story and how you had a hard time and it was very upsetting for you and just have a conversation with your baby. That class was a week long. That was on day one. And by the end of the class, she's like, I've been doing that every afternoon when I go home and I already feel much better. So I wish everybody could see you, Stephanie, but we don't all live in Colorado and people don't know that. It's something so simple. It would have been great if she had that information when the baby was born and not had to wait for 6 months and feel guilty and feel depressed. And then, of course, she's trying to also be a nurse in a hospital or has a job.
and the really sweet thing too, Holly, is, as you know, the baby will tell their story too.
Mhm.
So the parent will share, this was my experience. I felt so sad. I felt out of control. I wanted it to be different. And the baby responds.
Mhm.
And we, in this culture again, don't give enough credence to just the whole sentience of this little human.
Mhm.
They had their own experience and they're not expressing it in necessarily words because they're an
Right.
infant, but they will show you and tell you what happened. And you
Mhm.
can listen and reflect it and validate for them, just like you
Mhm.
would with someone who's using words. And that in itself is, as you're saying, so healing. It's healing for the parent or parents, it's healing for that baby. And then life can go so much more smoothly. In that situation, that birthing parent can feel more bonded to their child. And likewise, the baby will feel more attached to the parent.
Yeah.
So it's not just kind of a nice thing to do. It's critical, right?
Right.
This is like we're setting people up for the rest of their lives. Your child does not have to feel like they don't belong. Or you
Right.
don't have to feel like I'm not as attached to this child. You can make a difference so early on and change the whole trajectory of that relationship. It's incredibly powerful, I think.
For the new moms group here, I do an hour long, maybe hour and a half, connecting to your newborn. And that's exactly what we talk about. I first just have everybody tell their birth story. And there's sometimes a lot of tears. Sometimes things went really well. Sometimes they didn't. And then I asked, how did breastfeeding go afterward? Did you get skin to skin? How's your baby? And I encourage people to listen and be invested in being present for each other. And then I just say, your baby also went through this same thing. So sometimes your baby wants to talk about it. Just like it was very cathartic for you to talk about it, your baby will also perhaps have that same benefit by you just listening to your baby and just talking to your baby and reflecting back. And like you said, validating. And sometimes your baby will be crying and you can't really figure out why. And you've changed the diaper and done all the tricks to make sure he doesn't have gas. He's not too hot, too cold. Sometimes he just wants to be held while he's crying because maybe he's just telling you about this experience that he had.
Exactly. And obviously, in your program, you focus a lot on the experience of the body and mindfulness. And these are skills that people can and would potentially do well to carry not just through the pregnancy and birth, but also into parenting, right? So a lot of what mindfulness is about, it's learning how to regulate your nervous system, not getting attached to whatever that feeling is in your body, but letting it be, letting it shift, letting it change. Can you speak to how that might help support parents as they grow along with their own children through the parenting process?
It's just like what you said. Pretty much everything I teach, I'll be like, this is what happens when you practice. That might come in handy when you have a child. And a lot of times there's people who have already had a baby and they're nodding their heads. And then I'll bring them into the conversation. And literally everything that I teach about how to let go of attachment, being able to regulate how you're responding or reacting to the events that are going on around you. And that might be your toddler having a tantrum in the grocery store. That might be your teenager staying out too late and you having to negotiate, what are we going to do about this now? How can we move forward in a positive way? And especially that new baby period, like you said that you were born as a mother when you were able to let go. And that is the key, especially when you have infants and young children. You have to be able to let go. You may have had a plan that this is what you're going to do, but there's going to be a lot of times when that plan is thwarted by, it could be anything. It could be a sick child. It could be you need to change the diaper and now you're a mess. How are you going to respond to your lack of sleep? I think a lot of times it's those plans that you have, and then there's something happening with the child that interrupts that, everything that you're learning in class about how to let go during the birth process is going to really help give you a head start of how you're going to be able to let go when you have a baby.
Such an interesting time, right? That experience of needing to let go of things that you can't control. Maybe your baby is colicky or not sleeping, you're not sleeping, all these things that, like you said, we might have a plan about how we're going to navigate, and maybe the plan doesn't work out. And the flip side of that, as you mentioned with the young birther that you had who in that moment didn't hand her baby over to her mom, it's an opportunity also to set new boundaries, really stepping into that parenthood space and having to take a semblance of control over a situation that you might in the past not have done. So it's such an interesting time. That's why it's such a huge rite of passage on so many different levels of navigating this brave new world that looks a little different for everybody going through it.
Right. And I've been reminded of that whole thing with my 2.5-year-old grandson to go of the plan for the day. It's a great reminder. And like you said, stepping in, I really love that idea of boundaries. We don't want adrenaline in the birth space at certain times. What adrenaline is there for is for us to run away or fight a tiger. And there's not usually a lot of tigers running around the hospital. But what are your tigers? And a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, my mom really wants to be there, but I don't know. And I'm like, this might be the time that you start putting down those boundaries. A lot of people have come back the next class and they've said, yeah. I mean, even changing providers, I'll be like, okay, how do you feel about your provider? Being really honest with yourself, because that's the whole point, is how you feel. And also knowing that there are certain things that you want to keep in mind when it comes to the baby, for sure. But that feeling of safety is so important during the birth process. And setting boundaries is one of the ways that we feel safe. And that's also setting a good example for the child. And boundaries, I think, is also hard for a lot of people, a lot of women in their culture.
We've been speaking today with Holly Lammer, a registered nurse certified in inpatient obstetric nursing with more than 25 years of experience in low and high risk births. Her new book is out called Intelligent Birthing, Ancient Wisdom for a Modern Birthing World. Holly, could you share a little bit about how people can find out more about you, more about your program and your book, and maybe get in touch with you?
My website is intelligentbirthing.com. And there are links to buy the book on Amazon. There's a link to sign up for in-person classes if you're in the Boise or the Treasure Valley area. There is also the link to the online program. And anybody who is listening today can get a 30% discount on that online program with Friends 30, FRIENDS 30. And you can use that discount code for 30% off of that online program. And my email and contact information is on the website as well.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Holly. It's a pleasure to speak with you and see you again.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's really great to talk to you again, too.
Thank you so much for listening to the Prepared for Parenthood podcast today. I hope you found this episode educational, informational, and conversational, and that you'll join me again for another episode soon. If you enjoyed listening to today's podcast, I'd very much appreciate if you would rate, review, and subscribe. If you're interested in more information related to today's podcast, or are looking for parent coaching or courses, you can find my information in the show notes or online at preparedforparenthood.com.